Welcome to science class. Today we are going to investigate cell boundaries, the cell membrane, and the cell wall. In the next video we will discuss the specific mechanisms by which materials enter in and out of cells. Cells need a constant input of resources, and the cell membrane is the direct pathway into the cell. Unicellular organisms are bathed in all of the elements of nature, not all of which are welcome into their fragile bodies. How is that regulated? And our cells are bathed in all the elements of ourselves. You are 70% water. Most of it is inside your cells, but your cells are also surrounded by fluid. You're a bag of water, or at least it's useful to think of yourself as one when trying to understand this stuff. In reality, you're way more special than just a bag of water. Mixed in that water are the chemicals of life. Nutrients, waste, gases, hormones, antibodies, electrolytes, vitamins, neurotransmitters, all of these things are made by cells, pass through your blood and lymph, and interact with and enter other cells. It's complicated, but we're going to figure it out. Let's get started. Cells are enclosed by a lipid membrane. Lipids, you will recall, are insoluble in water, so it's the perfect kind of compound to contain the cell. Cell membranes are actually a double membrane, which we usually call the lipid bilayer. The lipid molecules are called phospholipids, and they contain a polar head region and a non-polar tail region. This causes them to line up with the heads facing away from each other. Because they are polar, a bit like a magnet, they naturally line up away from each other. The cell membrane really is an organelle, like your skin is an organ. It's dynamic, it can change shape, it has multiple different functions. The lipid bilayer is not just a lipid bilayer. It is completely covered in protein and carbohydrate structures that have many functions. There are special types of protein channels that act as doorways, allowing molecules our cells need to enter, but only when triggered to do so. Your cells can't just leave all the doors open at all times. We're going to discuss those at length in the next video. Other structures, such as desmosomes, hold your cells together. They act almost like Velcro. Here's a good question. How does your immune system recognize you? Your white blood cells cannot see, they're not conscious. How do they recognize foreign invaders? And why do they sometimes screw up and attack your own body, such as what happens with autoimmune disorders? Your cells recognize each other by carbohydrate and protein molecules on the surfaces of your cells. These are called antigens. What our immune system does, and this is a very rudimentary explanation, is learn the shape and patterns of your antigens and leave them be. But when they encounter new antigens, we build antibodies that will recognize and bond to them, singling them out for destruction. In some cases, such as celiac disease, a molecule that looks similar to our own is targeted, but because of the similarity, it causes the immune system to, by extension, attack ourselves as well. This isn't a lesson on the immune system, so back to business. We describe the lipid bilayer as selectively permeable. It's like a bouncer at a club. The membrane allows some molecules to always pass right through. Oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water are small enough that they can pass right through the membrane. This is ideal because you need oxygen and water constantly, and you need to get rid of carbon dioxide constantly. The other big key here is that it requires no effort to keep these things in balance. Homeostasis and cell membranes will be the topic of the next video, so we won't dig into that quite yet. Any molecule that is also lipid soluble will pass right through the membrane. This includes hormones and steroids and certain drugs. Other substances cannot directly pass through the membrane, so they instead use special structures embedded within the cell membrane to get in or out. These substances are either too large to pass directly through the cell membrane, or they are too polar or are repelled by the lipid bilayer, or are highly ionic and repelled as well. In many, but not all cases, energy has to be expended in order for the cell to obtain or get rid of these substances. So that's an overview of the structure and a preview of the function of cell membranes. All cells have lipid membranes, but not all cells have a cell wall. No animals contain a cell wall, and virtually no protists do either. But plants, algae, bacteria, and archaea, and fungi do contain different kinds of cell walls. Cell walls are not flexible or dynamic, not in the sense that the cell membrane is. Cell walls are made predominantly of carbohydrate molecules. They offer some structural rigidity to organisms and allow them to build a definite shape. They are not solid, but are more mesh-like and porous at the molecular level, which allows material to pass right through, but they can block other large molecules and compounds. Cell walls help contain the cell, preventing it from overfilling with water, which can burst cells. But cell walls are passive. That is something I need you to keep in mind. We're going to cover the differences in cell walls between different kinds of life that incorporate them. Plant cell walls are composed of cellulose. Plants that contain wood utilize lignin as well, mixed into the cell wall. Lignin is much tougher and does not decompose easily, which is a major reason why the ancient forests of the Carboniferous period are preserved today as massive deposits of coal. Lignite is an early form of coal. Algae cell walls are made of glycoprotein, proteins with sugar molecules attached to them, and polysaccharides such as agar. Agar is used to make biological gels, such as what you see in petri dishes, that serves as a habitat and source of nutrients and calories for bacteria or other cultures. It can also be made into food for humans. Bacteria have a cell wall, which we also call a cell capsule, that is made of peptidoglycan, another protein-carbohydrate hybrid of sorts. The archaea have a capsule made of a similar compound which we call pseudopeptidoglycan. Fungi have cell walls made of chitin, a kind of carbohydrate. Chitin is also what forms the shells and exoskeletons of arthropods, which are insects, spiders, and crustaceans. And finally, diatoms, a kind of algae, make cell walls out of biogenic silica. Silica is used to make glass, and some diatoms literally have a shell of glass around them. That does it for the structure of cell boundaries. Next time, we will go into detail and look at the mechanisms by which atoms and molecules pass through the cell membrane. Thanks for watching.